The conversation just now for our audience is that we are going to be talking about mental health in the African community, in the African diaspora community. And for some strange reason, this is something that we don't talk about often, even though it affects us a lot. Because we are just like every other human being, it affects every people in this world. So it is good that from time to time we also talk about it. The first thing I would like to ask you is why don't we talk about it a lot, or is it me that it's just having the feeling that we don't talk about mental health as much as we should?
Thank you for that question. It's a great question. I think we've been there are lots of reasons why we don't talk about mental health, and unfortunately, a large percent of it has to do with fear, how we've been socialized, our religious beliefs, tradition, culture, but all of those things have worked hugely against us, because that fear about what saying you have issues around mental health, that fear around that, what it has done, it has made people hide when they're struggling, when they're, whereas there's certain things that could easily be done to support people with mental health problems. You know, I always say one of my favorite quotes is that you don't have to be mad to have mental health problems. Mental health is part of general well-being. We have physical health and we have mental health. You know, where if your physical health is in trouble or is failing, you go and get help for it. Similarly, you know, you may have pressures, stresses of life that can at times create problems with mental health, and it's nothing to be ashamed about. It's nothing to be afraid of. And because we have these beliefs that the traditional idea of someone with mental health is a crazy person running down the street naked. But in reality, all of us go through some level of distress. It's on a continuum, you know, from one end to the other, where the issue of mental health. There may be periods in your life where your mental health is really at a low ebb, or you're under huge amounts of stress, which in this day and age, you know, the percentage of people who are really struggling with their mental health has quadrupled, you know, and we see it in how people behave. You know, there's self-harm, and self-harm is not only about maybe cutting yourself. It's overeating, over drinking, being promiscuous. There are all kinds of things which represent self-harm that people don't realize. And people behave, you know, in ways that cause harm to their family, you know, without realizing it's because they're going through a period of difficulties with their mental health. So that's just a snapshot. And I think the attitudes really need to change. Otherwise, we're going to create generations of people who, you know, this thing about generational trauma, you know, generations of people, our young ones, we just have to look at them now, you know, with social media. You know, that's a whole section of mental health issues that social media is creating, you know, the pandemic, you know, so there's just so much that at the moment is happening to create huge problems with our mental health. So we really need to get a grip and stop thinking of mental health as some strange thing that happens only to certain people, or it's, you know, somebody has put some, you know, juju or magic and all that nonsense that people associate with it. We have to understand that mental health is nothing to be ashamed of. And sometimes intervening, you know, with very quickly, with a certain difficulty that you may be going through within your life, intervening very quickly, people being able to say, look, I'm struggling, I'm feeling depressed, you know, just being able to talk about it without shame, you'll be surprised, can reduce that difficulty and create a more healthy state of mind. So yeah, we need to talk about it. So thank you for bringing it up.
Thank you so much. I appreciate that. Just so we can have a little context in it, I was reading some posts before we started the interview. No, I was going through something like this. No, about the statistics of what is going on within the diaspora community, whether you are looking at maybe the US or UK or just look at the African in general, it means that what we are talking about is not some kind of isolated cases. It's huge. It's really huge in the community. I don't know what is your take on that because I look at it to be something really serious. No, we don't need to sweep it under the carpet.
I mean, without being over dramatic, it's an epidemic. It's an epidemic because from where we were 2, 3, 4 years ago to where we are now, there's an explosion of mental health problems. Suicide is on the increase, men, young people, and that comes from the impact of social media. People are behaving in the most outrageous ways, and it's not just young people, it's their parents. So social media has created its own mental health epidemic. Then that's been compounded with the couple of years that we've been in the pandemic, and what that has, the problems that has also created. It's increased domestic violence. It's increased, again, the level of suicide with young people. So where we are right now, mental health is massive. And in the West, there's an acknowledgement of it. There are new programs being turned around. I mean, everywhere now, the mental health programs to support people across the board because we're in trouble with it. So the West has always had a more open-minded view around mental health, even though there's still stigma, even in the West, but at least there are places that one can go, to get support. And that is, the governments here are throwing money at it now because they know, as far as the workforce, they're going to have even more problems if they don't address it. So where are we in Africa? What are we doing? Is there any kind of acknowledgement? I know there are more organizations coming up, beginning to try to work around mental health, but it's something that within the families themselves have to be comfortable to allow themselves, their children, to be able to talk about it, with a little bit more compassion and empathy and understanding about what mental health is, and moving away from the old stereotypes and misinformation, around mental health. We have to come away from that, ridiculous image we have of the person, who has mental health, which is nothing to do with us. We all have mental health. And saying mental health, as soon as you say mental health, I remember I was doing I used to write for the Punch newspaper in Nigeria. I wrote for 10 years on mental health. And when I first started, people said, you can't, I said I wanted to call it Mental Health Matters. And they said, no, don't do that. People won't read it. You can't call it mental health, call it well-being, or, I said, if you want me to do this, that's part of the problem. It's mental health. And we have to be able to say the word without, freezing up. It's not a bad word. Think of it just as, like I said earlier, you have physical health in the same way you have mental health, and either one can be out of sync at any point in your life. So from being warned against it, I ended up spending 10 years writing about mental health, which was quite an eye-opener that people, and that was 10 years ago, people were ready to hear about it. They were curious. People were sending messages, letters, so there is an appetite, to understand it, but there's still a lot of stereotype and fear that we really have to work hard to overcome.
If you enjoy this podcast, make sure you subscribe so you never miss any of our future episodes. Rate and review Obehi Podcast and share with your friends who might need it. I remain Obehi Ewafo. Thank you so much for listening, and talk to you in the next episode.